People who think about living on Mars haven't thought enough about living on Mars. I have a complicated relationship to that very clickbaity title, but I'll tell you the story that generates this talk. A few years back, I was at a meeting in Denver, Colorado, Boulder, Colorado to be specific, of a local company that is interested in Mars. And the head of this conference was conducting a toast at the end of an evening, and the sun was setting over the Rockies. It was a beautiful evening, and she said, "Let's raise a glass to going to Mars, and I hope that we all get a chance to raise a glass together on the surface of Mars." And all I could do was pantomime, tink, 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 as I watched my cup boil away. And I was struck that even people who are working to go to Mars maybe don't think enough about Mars, and hence this talk. So Mars, beautiful, red, big, visible in the night sky, one of the more red, brighter lights in the celestial sphere. For eons, we've looked up at that light, and we've wondered about it. The god of war, earliest telescopes, we saw things there. This is Percival Lowell's map of civilization on the surface of Mars, circa 1896 and 97. We were certain that Mars was alive. And then eventually we got better telescopes. We realized those were natural features on the surface of Mars, but we never lost the idea that maybe it was alive. And that's kind of understandable. It's a profound question, maybe. You know, are we alone in our universe? Are we it? I mean, imagine, that is terrifying for me. We are the intelligent life in the universe. It certainly can't be. But is something in our solar system harboring life? Could one of our nearest neighbors have life? So we've been trying to peel back the onion of that question about Mars history, Mars geology, and understanding if it ever could have been alive. And I've been working on that for a bit. Here is an image we took recently. The little rover down in the foreground there is Sojourner. We landed it in 1997. I helped out a bit. Yeah, Cameron was very kind. I have been at the laboratory for some number of years. We followed up the 97 effort with twin rovers, Spirit and Opportunity. They landed in 04. They were super powerful for us because they taught us that liquid water had been on the surface of Mars. And we know from here on Earth, where there's liquid water, we tend to find life. But they couldn't tell us some details about the water. Was it salty, sweet, acidic, basic? In short, would it support life? So in came the first, not pictured here, nuclear-powered mega rovers, Curiosity, which we landed in 2012, and then Perseverance, it's sitting beside me there, which we landed in 2021. Curiosity was packed full of all the instruments to unlock that question about ancient habitability of life. And it gave the data that scientists here on Earth were able to use to conclude that, yes, the environment, the wet environment, 3 billion years ago, when life was just getting started here on Earth, the wet environment on Mars could have supported life. Kind of a big deal. So we followed it up with Percy and put a sampling system inside of her and brought along a little helicopter that we slung underneath her belly, all so that we could help continue to answer this question. I don't know if any of you were paying attention. We had a paper came out in Nature this last week, and there was a big NASA press conference about Cheyenne Falls, and a very interesting sample that we have that shows redox gradients within the mineralogy. And if we had found it here on Earth, we'd be pretty certain, evidently, professor friends of mine would be like, yeah, that's biogenic. But if it's on Mars, you're like, what? I don't know. I'm not going to say that. But cool, and that's one of the reasons we bring samples back. But this obsession with Mars, this focus on Mars, the closeness of Mars to us, I mean, physically it's not that close, but environmentally it's closer than anything else we've got in our solar system, leads people to wonder, should we live there? Why would we live there? Some people are reasonably concerned that calamity may befall us here on Earth. I've made a list, you could make your own in the privacy of your own home, of the things that might get us. They're divided into two bins, the internal and the external. I'll start from the bottom up. I'm not going to treat the internal problems, the problems that are our own, because wherever we go, we will be there. So you can't run far enough or fast enough to escape yourself. So leave those be. And then you start at the bottom of this one and we move ourselves up. Invasion by space aliens could happen. Some people think it already has. Some changes, unanticipated or unmodeled in the sun we could definitely cook us. A local star near enough that when it goes supernova, we get goosed by gamma radiation, solar flares, a black hole wandering into our solar system. All these things are definite bummers, right? And they would take us out, but they don't differentiate really between the planets in our terrestrial orbit. So if you're on Mars or if you're on Earth, you're going to be cooked by these things. But when you get to these top two, they are kind of local. They're local problems. Asteroid smashes into us, a comet hits us. Anybody read Lucifer's Hammer? I loved that book when I was a kid. Super volcano erupts. Anybody watch the Paradise, that television series? That was, easy watching. So at any rate, so these could make a difference if you were on Mars. Let's talk a little bit about what Mars is like. So it's, cute. It's got some gravity, about 3/8 of the gravity that we have here on Earth. Its day is remarkably similar to Earth's. Just imagine you get to sleep in 40 minutes every day. It sounds awesome, doesn't it? Let me tell you, it totally is effed up. After like about a week, you're just 40 days and 40 nights to come back around. Nothing ever feels right. The surface temperature, well, it's not like liquid, not molten lead like Venus. You get highs in it feels kind of nice. Not really. It ends up being that what we think of as air temperature, like right now, that's mostly the equilibrium with the air. There's only about 1% of atmosphere on Mars, and so it's not really the same kind of conductive, convective equilibrium that we have here with your skin and your life, and so it's all to the ground. Anyway, surface pressure is very low, about 1/100th of the atmosphere we have here. It's all carbon dioxide. You can't breathe it to help yourself or to survive. It doesn't have a magnetic field, so we get a lot more radiation from the sun. That's a bit of a bummer. The year is twice as long, depending on what's your mood. That's either cool or not. There is water, we believe, on the surface of Mars or subsurface of Mars in the polar regions. It's all frozen. Perhaps some of it's very salty. There's a recurring slope lineae that may be related to liquid water, may not. And you can only get there, humans can only get there about every 26 months. As we here on Earth and Mars go around the sun, there's a period about every 26 months which is energetically favorable, and the best rockets that we have built can make it to Mars with all the energy that we have. And aside from those 26 months, you really can't. So I'm struck by it might not meet our needs for survival if things went bad here. So let's talk about what we need to live. We need a lot of things. I need a lot of things to live. I'm all up in here, right? This is where I like to live, at the tip of the pyramid. But if we break it on down and we bring it down to the very basics, the super basics, air, water, and food. Air we need very rapidly, on the order of seconds, maybe a few dozen seconds you can hold your breath. If some of you want to try right now, start holding your breath and see how long you make it. Water on the order of days, and then food on the order of weeks. Now, there have been mass extinction episodes during the period on Earth that we understand life has been present. If you think about the last 500 million years or so, there have been a few of them. And they've been things like asteroid or body collisions with the Earth that have changed the environment, give us like nuclear winter, and lost a lot of food. And mostly those extinction events, like the one 65 million years ago that got rid of the lizards and put us in place, those were food problems. And omnivores, like us, sort of did well. And never has it been really a case, since life has been going on here, where water and air have been in scarce abundance. But if you go to Mars, to solve the potential paucity of food, you're going to a place that has neither food, nor water, nor air. And also not shelter. When Maslow made his hierarchy of needs, he was considering us here, and shelter was like, I'd like to be warm. It wasn't an absolutely necessity as it would be on Mars. A momentary, you're dead in minutes if you're exposed. So I don't think Mars is a good place for us to think about going and living. And I also kind of think it's a bad idea to have that plan. All of the care and thoughtfulness and the engineering prowess that would be necessary to make Mars terribly uncomfortable but livable is exactly what's needed to keep this planet in absolutely fantastic shape to live. So what good is Mars? I happen to love it. I love the planet, and there's still a lot for us to learn from Mars. In the act of exploration, in the act of scientific investigation. This is the Gale crater where we landed Curiosity some number of years ago, in 2012, 13 years ago. Actually, it's a digital elevation map constructed by orbiter overflight data, and down here in the shadows between the crater rim and Mount Sharp is Curiosity. You can't see her, of course, but she's there, I promise. And here is Jezero crater. This is the fan delta on which we landed with Perseverance. Perseverance is now way up here on the crater rim. She's taken now 30 samples, I believe she's got, between the ones that she's laid down and the ones that she's got with her. She has a total of 43 sample tubes, and we have aspirations to bring 30 of those home here to Earth to operate on them, investigate in scientific inquiry to understand what's up with Mars, what's up with that Shayeva Falls sample, and if life did ever exist on the surface of Mars. So when I think about Mars and what to do with Mars, I think it's all about following our curiosity. I loved the name of the rover, Curiosity, when she was named. And curiosity's in our genes. We are the curious naked apes. We are born through hips too narrow to pass a fully baked human brain. We come into this world almost completely unprogrammed. This is my son Ansel. That's my daughter Olive, now mortified. And I watched them stumble around, unable to put their fingers to their nose. doing system identification to understand how to motivate this crazy body in which they found themselves. But they were curious. They were driven by their native human curiosity. All of us were. That is what we do. And we follow that when we explore. We follow that when we ask questions and look for the answers, be they in the stratosphere or on the surface of Mars. That exploration, both outside and also in, ideally, about yourself, because it's good to be a little self-aware, but also just about ideas, philosophy, art. It makes us who we are as a species, and Mars is a beautiful place on which to perform, really like a performance art piece, what the art of the possible might be. And when we do that, like in art, music, Jason, thank you guys. And that exploration, we are made better by it. We ask and look for the edge of what we can do, what questions we can ask and answer, and we become more as a species through that process. So that, for me, is what Mars is about, and I hope that it stays about that. That's it. Let's hear some questions. How do you get a rocket to come back from Mars? Yes. Yeah. It is more difficult to get a rocket to come back from Mars than it is to get a rocket to go to Mars, right? There's not helpers and people walking and counting down. And yes, it is more challenging. It has to be mostly done autonomously, or the actual events are done autonomously. But when that rover runs around, she's autonomous, right? We give general ideas. Please go to that waypoint. Please go over here, take pictures, send them back. We're going to think about what we want to do. But the basic motions, the light travel time between Earth and Mars ranges from about 3 to about 25 minutes. And that means you can't joystick a robot on the surface of Mars. You can't go and then wait for 3 minutes, then 3 minutes, and then see, oh dear, that's not good. So it's all done autonomously. You have to understand the systems pretty well, or very well, and write software to make them breathe and live and do what they need to do to stay alive and continue to ask for instructions. Yes. Great. So we are delicate creatures here, all of us, right? We, don't really want to see more than about 9 Gs ever, 9 times the gravity of Earth, or the acceleration of Earth, and we honestly really try and keep it below 5 or 3, astronaut rating stuff. And so when you go and take if you were to take a human to Mars, it takes a long time, like, let's say 500 days of transit or so. And so if you want to think, if all of you would like to imagine what that would be like, get yourself the most comfortable chair you know, and put it in your closet, and sit in it for 1.5 years or 2 years. I worry that certainly I may have just answered your question. I'm not really interested. But I don't think that, I wonder if we're capable of it, right? Friends of mine who are astronauts who've gone around the planet for 100 or 200 days come back kind of wrecked. All of the forces that make us healthy here on Earth destroy us in space. The bones on all of our bodies grow along lines of principal stress. There's little cellular functions in our bodies that adds bone where the load is and subtracts bone from where the load isn't. When you get away from the load, your bones start to go away. It's a natural process. Synovial fluid. Your spinal fluid in your brain cavity is all rated for 1 G of gravity across this. You hang out in space, you get eye problems, anyway, there's a ton of things. I don't really know if we could make it. Okay, if we tried, and there's ways you can do better at it. A big wheel spinning around, doing your best so that, big enough so you don't throw up all the time, and fast enough so that you have a gravity. But we are creatures of this place, and we don't do really great, for all I can see, I'm not an expert, but for all I can see, we don't do great when we leave this place. because we do so great while we're here. Next question. Yes, in the way back. Yes, so I believe, because it was hard for me to hear, but that you can build a radiation-proof shelter on Mars. Absolutely. It looks a little bit like a hole in the ground, or it's like a hole that you pile ground on top of. And you don't really get to even, I don't think, look at the beautiful Martian sunset through a window, because, you got one atmospheric pressure on one side of the window and 1/100th of an atmospheric pressure. It's a high risk thing to make that choice. So most likely you're looking at the sunset from a screen. It's totally fine, but I can tell you this. You can go to your house and you can dig a hole in your yard, and we have video feed from the surface of Mars that you can pipe into that screen inside a hole in your house, and you can live like you're on Mars. And if you were to get bored, you can go out and get a pizza. Yes. When will we get the samples back? But when we, sadly, this is actually pretty simple and true, when we want to. And the we is a complicated amalgam of opinions, and the want is complicated and sometimes illusory. Can we? Hell yeah. Do I have in my hand right now, in my pocket, enough information, enough knowledge to do it? Yes. Is it even super hard? No. Anyway, we just have to, we have to be interested in doing that. Yes. So the question was, what are the ideas for protecting humans on the way to Mars or on the way back from the radiation environment of the interplanetary transport? And that's mostly solar radiation that we're exposed to, and some cosmic rays. And the answer is something that shields water, for instance, like a lot of it, like 30 feet of it thick, would be like great. Accepting that high is another choice one can make. Airline pilots, get a lot when they just go up high altitudes. It's hard because you need a lot of cross-section to stop that high energy ionizing radiation, and that is kind of mass intensive. But
a rocket that could get 30 feet of water insulating off the surface of the Earth?
Do we have a rocket that could get 30 feet of insulating water off the surface of the Earth? We have rockets. The human beings are making rockets, the specifications of which are consistent with getting 30 feet of water off, hundreds of metric tons or 100 metric tons towards. Most of the big rockets use cryogenic fuels. Cryogenic fuels need to stay very, very cold. It's hard to keep them very, very cold. And so typically what you do to manage the fuels is you let them boil off. And so now you're in a race because I'm losing my fuel. I got a leaky gas tank. So the big rockets go up into space, into low Earth orbit, and then they bring lots of tankers up to refill, trying to refill at a rate that's not more than the gas tank leaks, and then you head off to Mars. There's still some stuff to be done. Okay, how many samples did we collect? Are we collecting? Have we almost collected all of to be confident in the amount of data that we have? And what was the second part? Where to land the rover? Okay, got it. Yes. So we get a lot of people together by scientific committee. And how many scientists in the house? Because nothing says party like a committee of scientists trying to make a decision, I tell you. 50 of them, and there's 72 opinions. I live to implement the will of science, so I can be a little salty at times. So a group of people got together, a science team got together. Actually, the studying of how much material you should bring back from the surface of Mars has been going on for decades. And strangely, it's 500 grams or a pound, which feels very round to me. The number of samples being 30 was something that was sort of also that was the minimum number, has been bandied about. There was 19 for a while, and 31 and 36. And it ends up being that it's convenient to pack them in a hexagon, so there's numbers that work geometrically in that. And so that's where we come to the numbers, the number of seats on the bus ride home. If I were a more thoughtful man, which I'm definitely not, I would have brought a little plastic os, the orbiting sample container. It looks about the size of a soccer ball and contains the sample tubes. But I wasn't going to riff this deeply into Mars sample return. Anyway, and how do we choose where to go to Jezero Crater? Again, a lot of passionate debate amongst a team of scientists, a large, open group of scientists, like an open call for landing site selection. Anybody comes, bring all your graduate students, because every graduate student's vote is the same as the professor's vote. Load it up. I've argued that I should have brought, when this guy was in kindergarten, I'm going to bring his kindergarten class, because this seems a little odd. But at any rate, yes, and so they debated and they decided on this Jezero Crater. And that's where we'll leave it. Thank you very much. You can ask me questions afterwards. We're good.